Hello and welcome to Mirror Music. On today's episode, recorded on Dr. King holiday, we discuss the Dave Matthews Band song Ants Marching and Clipse's Grindin', and we use that comparison to discuss how we see Dr. King's influence in our own lives as well as the lives of the artists. We get pretty deep into Carter Beauford and Pharrell and the Neptunes' use of percussion, how both groups perceive and portray the concept of hard work, and how an artist can take source material intended for children and use that in a new way, flip it on its head. And we discuss the Virginia connection between these artists, the legacies of both groups, and how public perception of what makes a serious artist, quote fingers, affects their standing in the public discourse. So thanks for joining us. How are we starting this out?
Hit like and subscribe on our page. We're doing wonderful things, and the more of you that get on this train that we're on, the sooner that we can come together on a day like this. Happy Dr. King Day to everybody. I don't think there has been a Black man in the history of this country that has brought people together. When civil rights got passed, I've always said, Black people need to understand civil rights do not get passed without white people being in agreement.
Right.
And this is a man that got white people in agreement, which makes him the biggest change agent this nation's ever seen. And I would like to think that men like you and me that come from different backgrounds, the reason that we are lifelong friends is a direct correlation between what this man represented. Amen to that, because I don't know what my life is like without somebody like you as a lifelong friend.
Me either. So, like same the other way around too. And after Dr. King too, the Swan Mecklenburg case in Charlotte too, like that had the busing and had the people going to schools that were not right by their house, and yeah, like that's because we wouldn't know each other without that.
No, we would not know each other. I told you, it's like I'm from West Boulevard. They took me to freaking Alexander Graham,
which is Myers Park. Old money Charlotte, for those of you who don't know.
Yeah, that's South Side. They took the poor kids from the West Side and took them to the South Side on the white side of town. It's like, when I look at it, it's like it used to be depressing, to leave the West Side and then go over there by South Park and see how nice all the white people with money was living. But the experience changed my life.
Yeah,
I didn't get that in Atlanta on the East Side. You know what I mean? Like,
And I grew up Plaza Midwood area, but I also went to Oak Lawn, to Irwin, to Piedmont, to West Charlotte. Like, so all of those are, I mean, Piedmont's a special place for lots of reasons, but it was also right beside Piedmont Courts too, and they pulled all those kids in there too. It was not like all sunshine and roses there, for sure.
And this is what's funny. Most of my friends from high school, my Black friends from West Charlotte, they went to Piedmont with you, and you knew them before I did, and that's about it being a beautiful thing. It's like, oh no, all of my friends from West Charlotte because you actually have known them longer than I have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful place, and West Charlotte's a beautiful place too. Yeah, it's just,
and it's being beautifully rebuilt and designed right now. Cheers!
It is. Cheers! Amen. They got a new building. They tore the old one down. The last video or last picture I saw was where they tore down the auditorium, which was like the last building still standing on the old campus. Which, that was the one that touched my heart, because I spent I was a chorus geek, so I spent like thousands of hours in that place, and it was just, but like, I understand it's a bigger, better place, like whatever, but
right. Can't we buy a brick and put our name on a brick?
I believe so.
I'll tell you how close it is to me. I mean, I lived in the hole right up the street from West Charlotte. I literally used to run around that neighborhood every morning. So it's like it's home. So it's like when the building being like, I don't even know how emotionally I'm going to react when I go back.
Yeah, I haven't been back over there. Like, it's one of those, I know I need to, but like, I don't know.
Right. No,
but totally. Yeah, all of that's possible because of Dr. King, of course. I mean, that's
absolutely. Got a good pairing today. You want to know what? And this is what I mean. You know what I thought about when I thought about this song?
Which one?
And I'm not Which one? Dave Matthews.
Okay, yeah.
And this kind of goes into the Dr. King thing, and we can get started with it too. And even while we're doing this, I've been in love with women before, but I was in love with a white woman once, a long, long time ago. And one of her favorite bands was the Dave Matthews Band.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a country white girl. She was sweet. She had soul. And so when I thought about, when I listened to this song, I thought of her.
Yeah.
For the first time in a very, very long time. And I was just like, man, music is so beautiful. The way that
That's
you
just
can
memories
attach
like
your
that. Yeah.
the people, and she's a special woman to me. Like, how about this? When I say let me submit something to you, that comes from her. That was
Mm-hmm.
her way of getting through to me.
Oh, okay.
So the whole problematic thing,
Mm-hmm.
that's her.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, imprints on my life. A big Dave Matthews fan can remember when she went to the concert that they had down here a lifetime ago, like,
Mm-hmm.
17, 18, 19 years ago or some shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But really groovy song. Dave Matthews Band was explained to me by her.
Mm-hmm.
Has a cool hippie white man you can smoke a joint with.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's a new. I mean, not to come full circle. We're talking about Ants Marching today, which was their first breakthrough single, I guess, from the first record. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Which I think is the same for this Grindin too, was the first for Clipse. We're doing Grindin by the Clipse and Ants Marching by Dave Matthews today.
It's not their first single, but their breakthrough. Yes.
Yeah. But this is the first one that like everybody that like was rotated on MTV and on 106.5 and all that kind of stuff. The other band that I almost remember in our last episode or maybe two ago where I gave you it was the Zeppelin episode. Whereas like these are the bands that everybody's come after that is still. I almost put the Grateful Dead as part of that list because there's a whole nother right. Because I mean, if we're being technical about it, they come from more of the Bob Dylan tradition, like the folk tradition. They come from that.
Right?
Yeah,
That's
Jerry
Garcia.
Sure. They come from that tradition, and then they add some of the electrified blues stuff to it too. But Dave Matthews Band is special in my life for lots of reasons. My wife is also a huge Dave Matthews fan. Like seen him in concert like 50 times, kind of huge Dave Matthews fan. And she would go when she lived in the Bay, when we met. She would go. They always play a show at the Gorge Amphitheater, which is not outside Seattle exactly, but like in Washington State. And she would drive from Marin, from California, to there between teaching, like Labor Day weekend. They played all 3 nights, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and that's it's like a 17-hour drive. I mean, so she would do that for them. And in college and shortly after college, she'd go up and down the East Coast with them with a group of friends too. So
wow,
it was a big thing for them. But actually, it's a really interesting. It's a good one to talk about actually on Dr. King Day, because they have black and white members of the band. They have they're famously diverse as a band themselves. Dave Matthews himself, I think she's going to kick my ass if I butcher this, but I'm pretty sure he was born in South Africa. I'm pretty sure. I know he lived at least some of his young life there, there and in England and in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is where the band formed. Which is another one of those connections that I did on purpose. That Clipse is DC, Virginia, right? Yeah. So these guys started in Charlottesville. That was where they're.
Okay, I didn't know they were VA.
Yeah, that's another one of those connections.
I've never really listened to the Dave Matthews Band like that, although I'm super familiar with the name. And so, since this is their first big single, just explain to me stylistically, maybe what this song represents and why you like it so much. Like for me, Grinding is one of the best hip hop songs ever.
I love that song.
And
it's not one that I knew before you suggested it either. We'll talk about that in a minute, but like it's one of those songs that there's not many artists that I can't sit still in my seat when I'm listening to the song. And that's one of those songs. Like I can't, like, even if I could like replay it in my head, like I'm sitting here dancing in the seat. Like it's one of those kind of songs.
the nod factor is heavy. I was listening to it right before this show. It made me get out my chair and pace around in my basement. I was like, "Ooh, I haven't heard Grindin in a minute. This shit is fierce."
It is. It's a great song. It's a great song.
It is.
You
So
asked like about Dave Matthews vibe and whatever. I think it is good. I mean, there is a contingent of them that are pot smoking hippies, which is from the Grateful Dead tradition. Like it's from that lineage. And the jam band part of it is part of the lineage too. Like where they improvise and play, like there's that jazz kind of blues influence out there too. Plus also all of the African stuff too. That's pulling from the tradition.
Okay, so the first thing that I felt about Ants marching, I was like, this band does great jam sessions. I immediately got that vibe. I was like, oh no, they jam. They might like just start rocking.
Yeah.
Like I get that from the melody. It's like, oh no, these motherfuckers can play. Like live.
They're incredibly talented musicians. All of them are incredibly talented musicians.
You hear it. Like it's kind of funny. Even in the process, it's like, you learn things and I learn things through the discourse of this. But my ear for the musicianship and the melodies for pop culture music, so to speak, is changing because of this show that we're doing together. And so I can hear some of the musicality and where it's coming from now instantly in a way that I probably couldn't a year ago. It's like, oh no, these motherfuckers can play. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's the same for bar. It's the same for bar work too. Like I can hear. That's one of the things I love about this show is that I'm reciprocating back to you what you were saying to me. Like it is teaching me what to listen for. Like it's tuning my ear. Like I can hear things like you just said, like that I couldn't hear before, or didn't hear before, or like, more specifically, didn't know to listen for. I guess is a better way to say it.
Right. That's what it is. It's like, and you can even go back to our early episodes. It's like a lot of our first episodes is really just breakdown and feeling out. And the reason why our episodes have gotten better is because the feeling out is done and we're kind of in a rhythm of like understanding the other person's music, which was like the point of this show. And so my ability to kind of ride the wave is so much easier than it used to be. I can just jump in now and hear certain things. I'm like, oh, these are great guitars. It's like, oh, the drummer's live. It's like, oh, this is how they like they formalize and synchronize their music like this. They're an offshoot of this band. I actually am familiar with the Dead. So it's like when you said the Dead, it's like, oh, and that makes even more sense to me now because I do know some Grateful Dead stuff. And so now I'm able to connect some dots about the lineage of music, even more stuff. And even when you brought up Dylan, I'm like, yep, I can totally see these things now. And that's why we started doing this, is to bring us closer together and bring the understanding of life, and coming together through music. And so I hear things differently. And so I say this like respectfully, I kind of jammed out to this song a way that I probably wouldn't have jammed out a year ago.
Sure.
Yeah. Because before I'm trying to understand. Now I understand and I can really like enjoy the music.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh no, what you motherfuckers are doing. You guys are great.
Yeah, I left the version I listened to before this. There's lots of pieces of context I'm gonna have to bring in here now, but the most live versions of the song are 8-9 minutes ish long. I mean the radio version, I guess the studio version is what, 4-ish, give or take. But the live versions tend to be 8-9-10 minutes long because they play out the introduction, the dun 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 part. They play that out, they stretch that, and then then the like the solo jam part out at the end too. Like they have a long jammed out outro, and then they pull it back around to the lights down, you up and died at the very end, like they do in the studio version. It's an interesting piece in the Dave Matthews discography too, because this is one of the songs that the fiddle, the violin is the most central, because he's the one playing the dun 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 part, like that riff is a violin riff initially, and he is not a member of the band anymore. The violinist is not. So seeing it be performed now without him is an interesting experience, because he's also the one playing the like the solo at the end is like a fiddle breakdown essentially, and it's not anymore. He was he left. Um, he went on a leave of absence, I guess. He said he was going on. His name's Boyd Tinsley. He went on a leave of absence several years ago, and while he was on his leave of absence, he has been incredibly accused of sexual assault, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like just not we're not being associated with that. So um, I don't want to dig too much into that because that's not really the point of the song. But I did feel a responsibility to like say that because his part is one of the foundational parts. He was also one of the original members of the band. So but that part is one of the most instantly recognizable riffs of any of their songs too. So
were these allegations the reason that he is not part of the group?
yeah. I mean, they had talked previously. Now, this is that is Dave Matthews' official press release. There's definitely some also speculation to go along with it that he wanted to get high more than he wanted to play, and so he would also just like be playing like one or two notes instead of like ripping off the solos, and so it was not that part wasn't great leading up to that either. But yeah, there's and the accusations that I mean, I read up about it a little bit last night. They seem credible. They're not, and it's like several people, and it's like it's one of those things. It's not just like one person.
Of behavior.
Yeah, so it's not great, and all of
I mean,
all of the things were nice about him. Like we wish him well, you know, but he's got to go take care of his shit. Like I mean, that's.
I mean, part of what we cover in music is, you know, a lot of these people are troubled souls.
Yeah, yeah.
We deal with a lot of troubled souls in music. I hate to say it, some of our best artists are our most troubled people.
Yeah,
you know,
they
it's
are.
just the way it matter. Miles Davis used to beat his wife with his horn. You know, right, right.
Yeah, Dave Matthews, I mean, he like himself has like as they were rising up as a band, this is like 1989, 90, 91. His oldest sister was murdered by her husband, and then her husband killed himself too, like within a few months of each other. Um, so I mean, there's dark moments in all of these stories. Again, this is not really the point of Ants Marching, but it gives context to like the
A band
brotherhood and the band.
context, yeah.
Yeah.
So where Ants Marching sounds very, very different than most of the stuff that we usually cover too.
Yeah.
So tell me some of your rationale for this song, because it just stylistically sounds very, very different to me. And genre wise, I don't know where to place it exactly. I just know it's funky.
Yeah, it is. Dave Matthews, generally speaking, is a lot funkier, and that comes from Stefan Lessard, the bass player, who is like pretty dramatically younger than them, and they kind of saw him playing at like the club or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, this little white kid has got like serious skills." And Carter Beauford, who's the drummer, who has like one of those big ass drum kits that goes almost all the way around him too, and he's I don't know, he's one of my favorite drummers to listen to, like and he's one of the more technically proficient ones too, obviously, but he's up there with and he's where the groove comes from, right? Like he's why when you call it funky, that's where it's coming from.
He better drummer than what's his name, Dan Henley. You got that right?
Don Henley, technically, yeah, probably, yeah.
Okay, I'm just looking for context so that I
Yeah,
understand where he is.
he's like if you're saying like Neil Peart is like the guy from Rush is like the very top of the top of
Okay.
technically skilled, and John Bonham of Led Zeppelin is the like heaviest one, like the
Right.
and he's a funky version of the like he's up there in that stratosphere to me. I mean, there are people who wouldn't say that necessarily, but like I think he's what he brings to the band is that important.
So since we having a funk conversation right quick and we're talking drummers, I'm going to go to the top of what I would call the black heap right quick.
Yeah.
Well, literally, there is a song by James Brown called "The Funky Drummer," which is based
Hmm.
on Clyde Stubblefield,
Yeah.
and I know you are familiar with
Yeah.
James Brown. So, where would you put this funky white boy
No, he's
in
not white. He's a black
relationship
guy.
to
He's
the?
the drummer's a black guy.
Oh shit! You
Yeah,
got inside
which is part of the
information.
funk too. Like, yeah,
Oh,
the drummer is black. Boyd Tinsley, the violinist who got kicked out, is black. Leroy Moore, who's a saxophone player, died in 2009. And you can listen to the pre-live shows pre 2009, and you can hear that saxophone in there, man. That's some funky shit right there. He's black. He died and he had an ATV accident, riding around the hills or whatever, and then got on a plane, and he was fine or fine-ish, and got on a plane to go to the hospital. Not to the hospital. I'm saying that wrong. He got on the plane to fly back to Los Angeles, which is where he was living now, and he had a clot and stroked out on the plane, um, in 2009, and so, um, and then now present tense. They had a guy named Rashawn
this
Ross, who's a trumpet player, and Buddy Strong is keys.
man's
Um,
been
hmm?
man's been through a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, most bands who have been around their first show was, I think, 1991. So like
Right?
so they've been, what, 30 years?
3 decades.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 decades.
So you're going to have some stuff, like everybody's going to have
So,
some stuff over 30 years, right?
so I'm going to tell you, and I'm glad we're having this conversation. Okay, so the thing that really struck to me, the song, and I'm not being funny, and this goes back to the whole Dave Chappelle thing about the melodies and stuff
Hmm.
that different genres and different class of
Yeah.
people. Oh, well, I heard the drums and it made me think of Clyde Stubblefield from
Yeah.
James Brown. And
I'm sure
that's
he
where
comes
I
from
was,
that tradition, I bet. I
it
don't know
sounds
that,
like
but
it. Sounds like I was like, whoever this white dude is, he sounds like he's inspired by Clyde Stubblefield to me, like drum
mhm,
wise. And that's why I
mhm.
was like, oh, you're like, he's black. I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. It's like,
Yep.
that's one of Clyde
No,
Stubblefield kids. And I can hear the funk in it. The
yeah.
funky drummer. You know,
He
yeah.
is a funky drummer for sure.
No, he
Uh,
is like the drums were funky on there. It's the first thing that I noticed about the record, and it's like I was like I can't front when I heard it. I was like I feel so black for noticing the drums first.
no, I mean, it is groove centric music for sure. Like,
Okay,
and like you've implied too, like this came out, not this song, but the band started its rise shortly after Nirvana did. Like so they're coming up through the things at the same time.
the
This Ants
stylistic
Marching was
approach,
94, I think, like when it was released, Under the Table and Dreaming. So it would have been after that a little bit. But it's white, for context, it's white people music. Like um it's got a white front man and guitarist and so forth, and songwriter primarily. But it's not based on guitars really. I mean, it has guitar in it, but it's not guitar music, right?
so I think we're getting down to why it sounds different. So I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to say this like respectfully.
Mm-hmm.
This band appears to make music just from this song that I'm hearing and
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying. Well, they're making music. Not to be funny, the way black people tend to construct music, which is usually around the drums and the keys first.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get into your guitar stuff. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas usually what we cover, and this is what I mean about it stylistically being different, a lot of the stuff that we listen to on the popular culture side,
Mm-hmm.
it's the guitar.
Yeah.
It's the guitar. It's the style of guitar. It is the person playing the guitar
Right. And the
that,
songwriter, yeah, sure. They're the
that
ones
matters.
that are the
Right. And so this feels different. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And not being funny, it just feels like it's more made in the vein of how traditional black music is in terms of what my ears are hearing.
Yeah. I would, yeah, they do it more collectively for sure. I still think
Yeah.
I don't know this for sure, but I'm still pretty sure that Dave is like the primary songwriter and he's doing stuff on guitar. But like, if you watch normal guitarists on mute and you're not listening to what they're playing, you're just watching their hands move and stuff like that.
Right.
Um, there are patterns that you'll see like in traditional guitar playing, like because most of it is based on the punk ethos, which is like power chords, or so you'll see like you'll see that kind of thing going on. Or you'll see like blues scale stuff. Most of it's based on like I said, Zeppelin is like one of those OG bands. Like everybody's trying to do a version of that. But what you're seeing with Dave Matthews' hand is much more rhythmic, I guess. Like they joke about him having monkey hands because like his I can't even do it. Like I I can play reasonable recognizable versions of most white people songs, like not as well as them obviously, but like I can play so you can
I get what you're
recognize it.
saying.
I can't play the shit that he plays, like because
You
his
can't play what
hand
he
just
plays.
does things that I can't do. And he's singing these vocal licks and playing something completely different with his hand like this at a different rhythm. And I have a like you see my skin, I have a hard enough time with rhythm doing it when I'm playing anyway, but he's got like one funky rhythm coming out of his mouth and another funky rhythm going with his hand too. He's playing these weird ass chords and stuff. So it's
He's different.
yeah, he's a different dude. He's a different dude. Um,
See, most of these guys that are frontmen of these bands that we cover,
mhm,
they kind of fall in certain boxes.
mhm.
Like Mick, Robert,
Yeah,
um,
Lennon. Yeah,
Freddie,
yeah,
Lennon.
yeah,
No, they can fit in certain boxes. That's what I mean about something about them sounds different to me. So
yeah,
when you're saying all this, it's confirming musically what I'm hearing. It's like, no, no, this guy in this band is different stylistically
yeah.
than stuff that genre wise, I guess they are kind of put in the box, but they do not fit in that box necessarily.
No,
And from what you're saying, he does not fit in that box either as a front
mhm.
man and as an artist or as a
No,
guitarist.
definitely not.
So this is more funk inspired than rock inspired, is
Yeah,
really what I'm hearing.
yeah. Um, play that funky music, White Boy. They play, Sly and the Family Stone. They play, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah,
they play
I can
James
hear it.
Brown. They play all those things when they play live too.
Mm-hmm.
Sledgehammer's Peter Gabriel. Um, like they have the stuff, even the stuff that they cover is often more funk inspired too. I mean, it's
Right, right.
that kind of stuff because they have the chops to do it. Like that stuff is not easy to play, right? Is not easy at all. So they have the chops to do it, which
Those
is
who
cool.
can,
Yeah.
right? Those who can. Yeah.
Hmm.
So let's I think um who is Dave Matthews as a songwriter? Tell me about him as a songwriter, as a lyricist, and
Hmm.
where this and is this song an indicator of his songwriting skills? I did not find the songwriting to be excellent on this song,
Yeah.
and
The
that's kind of
lyrics are
why.
not as he
Right.
is a better lyricist than this. Generally speaking, generally
Wasn't
speaking,
super impressed by the songwriting on this song. Wasn't super impressed by it, but I can see the talent, obviously.
yeah. This is early in the career. This is not also widely considered to be one of their better songs. Like, I mean, it's a good song as a hit song, but it's not like if you're talking to like hardcore Dave Matthews fans, they never would say this is one of his better songs. Like, this is um, not one of those. Um, there and it's not my favorite either. Like it's a good song and I like it and I think it's an important one to talk about and I think it's a good introduction to them too.
Okay.
It's a good like stepping off point. But as a songwriter, he's famous for love songs, particularly like Crash Into Me is like the most iconic of them. Um, that that most of the listeners would know. Um, there are really heavily sexual songs too, which is which you know to expect becoming from a funk tradition because a lot of those come from that tradition too. Um, there's a lot of songs that are, I guess you would call them hippie-ish. I mean, in the like um, protect the world kind of way. Like we'll probably talk about another one eventually. The song "Don't Drink the Water" is
I'll
about
say this band is friendly.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, "Don't Drink the Water" is about the people who came to this country and kind of wiped out all the Native American population. Like it's among other things. It's which is why we'll talk about that when we get to like American Terrorist or something like that. It kind of fits in that in vein. He's another one where the lyrics not don't matter, but they are not the primary reason you go to listen to a Dave Matthews Band concert, right? They are good lyrics. They are um about freedom and about love and about, I mean, all those kind of hippy dippy things. Though the songs don't come off as hippie-ish to me, really, in the same way like the Grateful Dead or Fish
Okay.
bands do. And the hardcore Dave Matthews fans are probably going to get on here and tell me that I'm wrong, and I might be, but it's it's not. It's one of those. They are one of the bands that the lyrics are good and important, but they're not the reason.
They're not the end all be all of this
They're
band.
not. No, they're a
Band,
band
I
that's
feel
about
like the band
the
could play.
musicianship and the jamming and like
I'm
playing
about
them
to say,
out and
yeah, right. I feel like
improvisation.
I'm about to say this band could play one song for about 30 minutes. It
Hmm.
feels like, and people would be okay with it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I totally get that, man. I can see that. I think that is why this is a good song. Is that
hmm,
everything that you're saying is like, oh, I can see it even if I don't hear it all on this song, and that
yeah,
makes it a good introduction to them because
yeah,
everything that you're speaking of, well, me not being familiar with them like that,
hmm,
but I can hear everything that you
yeah,
were saying about them within the confines of this record, and that actually makes the record great to me.
yeah,
Like now that you've explained some things, it's like, oh no, I can hear all the things that you're talking about within the confines of this record.
yeah. It's a great record. It really is. I like it. I'm just being honest, like for the hardcore fans of this band, this is not the, like, if you were going to have one of them say, like, you need to listen to these songs to understand this band, this probably would be on the list, but it would certainly not be the first song
Right.
they'd put on the list. Um, so
Right.
so does that make sense? Is that enough
Yes. No, no, no.
context? Okay.
That's I actually think that's a great explanation of everything. I mean, those were most of my questions that I had about the record, and you've kind of like answered them like it's what I thought it was. They're not like this super lyrical wordsmith
Mm.
band, but they're a great
Yeah.
funky fucking rock out band. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those reasons, and I don't know any other way to say this, but because women like them particularly, they are not necessarily perceived as a serious rock band. Like
Mm.
like they're it's and that's one of those things that goes along with the Grateful Dead, and it goes along with a lot of those kinds of soft. They're not soft, and they have lots of songs that are heavier than this one, but um, they're not they are not perceived like, and their jokes on like Saturday Night Live and other places about Dave Matthews Band and Dave Matthews fans, and I mean, like, they're perceived as being soft and like not serious musicians or serious whatever. Like, I mean, they're another one of those bands that's dismissed by Rolling Stone. I mean, that kind of thing, right? They're one of those, and
You're
it's,
a
it's
band, but you're not a real.
and they sell out tour. They go on tour every summer, so they sell out everywhere every summer. They I think Wikipedia said that their last 7 albums have debuted at #1 on Billboard. Um,
Wow.
so like they're riding it all the way to the bank being soft, I guess. I don't know, but like it's
Right.
um, it's just funny
Working
how
for
that works, like, because they're not perceived to be like, when you're naming like the best bands of the '90s or whatever, the people are not naming Dave Matthews, they're naming Nirvana and Pearl Jam and blah 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 blah,
right,
blah, right, and REM.
right,
But
right.
this is, I think, one of the most important ones too. They're just very different from the others.
So
Mm.
on the flip side,
The connection that I saw between the two was, we really didn't we just talked about Dave Matthews, really we didn't talk as much about the song, is that these both are songs about working, kind of. I mean, like, working hard. I mean, the lyrical content, after a fashion, right? I mean, like, different versions of that, obviously. But I mean, Ants Marching is about like the rat race and like all waking up and doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Um, and the riff is repetitive too, right? Dun dun dun. I wish my
right.
violin was fixed. I would play it for you, but like, it's um, and this song also is after a fashion. I mean, it's titled that way too. Like, Grindin is like
Grinding. Yeah.
about working hard. right?
Well, well, you know, I'll quote the song, and this kind of just tells you where they're coming from. My grind's about family, never been about fame.
Mhm.
For days I wasn't able, there was always Cain.
Okay, yep, yep. That's some good stuff, man.
That's some
Like
good stuff right there. Yeah.
I have,
That's,
I'm continually impressed. I mean, they're brothers, right? Right.
they are brothers.
Right. Like I'm
Malice,
continually like impressed by the Kane puns in this song. There's because there's several. We'll get into that later, but but Cain and Abel. I mean that story is
that's,
apropos
yeah.
for brothers too, right? Even though
Right.
hopefully
Well,
they're not
that's,
killing
so,
each
so let's
other.
kind of start right there. It's like, well, there's something so apropos about, two brothers on a song where, quite frankly, they're talking about the family business,
Hmm.
which isn't like a legalized trade.
No.
And so the whole Cain and Abel juxtaposition,
Mm.
in if I'm not mistaken, that's Malice, who now goes by No Malice.
Right.
So the brothers are Malice and Pusha T.
Hmm.
Malice is the big brother. Malice is actually a Christian now and has found God and goes by No Malice. That's why
Okay.
Pusha T went solo.
Okay.
But when he's saying that, there is some "Am I my brother's keeper" to that too, because he's the big brother in the duo.
Right.
So when he's saying, "For days I wasn't able, there was always Cain,"
Hmm.
like I'm big bro too. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Right. And it's my
And
job
so
to look out for him. Yeah. It's part of the
so
deal.
so there's some inside track to even like the bars on this, and these two guys are probably two of the most underrated lyricists rap has ever seen.
Oh, they're
And
great, man.
and a
Great.
lot of it is because most of their talk in their prime was drug terminology. And quite
Hmm.
frankly, I think they were docked for it in a way where somebody like a Jay-Z was actually amplified and risen up about it,
Hmm.
And so we
Right.
kind of pick choose our heroes a little bit,
Hmm.
but lyrically, these guys are brilliant.
Yeah. I
And
noticed
this
that listening to this.
and this is one of those songs that, because the beat is so phenomenal,
Yeah, it's amazing, amazing beat.
this is one of those beats where when you have a greatest hip hop beats ever conversation,
Hmm.
this is one of those beats that gets tossed in the mix. When this record came out, nobody knew who the Clipse were like that.
Hmm.
But every MC worth their metal that was already in the game, kind of, oh, they grabbed this beat and they rapped on it. It was one of those beats that drove the industry nuts.
Hmm.
Okay.
I can see that. I can see a lot of different flows working
It
with this beat.
does. And so a lot of people tried their flows out on there. And so many people loving this beat and jumping on this beat kind of killed some of the respectable emceeing that is being done by the actual people who originally
Hmm.
recorded the record, because people who were bigger and famous than them at the time jumped on the record.
Hmm.
They didn't really get their due as MCs on this record. But here's what I tell you, and I remember this very well. Nobody that jumped on that record rapped better than them on that record. They were just
Okay.
bigger than
Right.
like Pusha T when he's on there. The jewels be flirting. Be damned if I'm hurting. Legend in two games like I'm Pee Wee Kirkland.
Hmm.
Platinum on the block with consistent hits, while Pharrell keep talking this music shit.
Yeah.
These guys can rhyme their ass off.
Yeah. I don't want to get off this thing too. Can you tell me who Pee Wee Kirkland is?
Okay. Pee Wee Kirkland is one of the biggest hustlers of his era,
Okay.
but also one of the best underground basketball playground legends that ever lived. Like Pee Wee Kirkland had just a bigger rep in the street as he
Hmm.
did on the ball court. Like he was a legend in the street and a legend on the ball
Okay.
court. So when he's
And
saying,
that DC street whatever, I mean that DC ball scene was a serious business. I know that.
I think Pee Wee might be out of New York or might have originated from that area and been up
Okay.
in New York, but Pee Wee Kirkland's infamous at the Ruck. Like
Okay.
he's
Okay.
he's a
He's one of those guys.
so he's one of those guys. He's a made man. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying?
I
On
got you.
both sides. And
I mean,
so
he's clearly citing him as if I should know or people should know who he is. Like it's not
black, like that's one of those black culture references. When he said
exactly.
legend in two games like I'm Pee Wee Kirkland, it's like, oh, that's what these guys are doing.
Hmm.
Got it. That's why when you hear grinding and he says that on the first verse, it's like, oh, okay. And so there is some art imitating life that people don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
The feds were at this video shoot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the feds. So you got to understand, this is their first single.
Mm-hmm.
The feds are at the video shoot.
Mm-hmm.
So when he's saying legend in two games like I'm Pee Wee Kirkland, oh no, the local authorities know who these guys and their organization is already. Like they know who these guys are. They are literally staking out the video shoot.
Yeah. Okay.
Everybody around them almost ended up doing time. Their manager literally did a whole bid and got 30 years. He got out because he copped the plea deal, but like so the grinding is real.
It's for serious, yeah.
No, it's for serious, almost to their detriment and their fault. Some things that happen is what led Malice to being no Malice.
Got it.
Finding God. Yeah. So it was that serious. So these guys, they're not just talking about this lifestyle to make it sound good. No, they're one of the guys that are living this lifestyle actually more so than a rap lifestyle. You know, like they're not living a rap lifestyle; they're living a street lifestyle. So, and that's just to give you some context and behind the story of like, oh no, some guys, a lot of guys in hip hop, they get on record and they talk like this and they've never done a thing. You know, oh no, these guys are doing things that is getting people in trouble and getting people time. You know, so it's one of those things. If you know how the grind goes, oh well, they resonate with people on a different level. The hustlers love them because a hustler knows, oh, these guys are telling the truth.
Right.
Yeah, these guys aren't making this stuff up. It feels authentic in a different way than when most guys talk. It's the details of it. When he says like 4.5 will get you in the game, anything less is just a goddamn shame.
Yep.
It's like, oh, okay, yeah, these guys are out here like
they know what they're talking about.
They know exactly what
these are real
about.
prices. Yes.
Yeah, these are real prices. It's almost like you have to understand that saying the things that they said on record is what led to the downfall.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
They were speaking pretty directly about the business, right? Like that. I mean, it's pretty. A lot of the stuff that I've heard before them and after too is more allusions, like more like oblique references, stuff that's you can take one way but also maybe another way, and you kind of pretend, oh, I really wasn't talking about that or whatever. This is pretty direct.
Yeah, there ain't none of that going on right here. None of that.
Yeah.
What questions do you have, like about maybe any of the lyrics? Are there some things lyrically that stuck out to you, bar wise, about the song?
Tons of them. You've already quoted some of them.
Oh, that's why I want you to kind of start unpacking it. I want to hear what your ears heard lyrically from these guys, because the beat is what it is. I don't even think we need to talk too much about the beat. The beat's one of the greatest beats ever.
I saw in the video, which I didn't know, that Pharrell was doing like that kind of thing where he was like, which is the sound that is kind of sounds like almost like a xylophone sort of. Or
I was thinking it's like a spoon. You're spooning almost.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. I couldn't think of but my guess is that, I mean, maybe he's that talented a musician that can like run the melody and do it like that. But it's what it sounds like is he did like the pitches and like recorded them on a keyboard and then played it on a synthesizer, like where he's playing he'd recorded the notes, but it's still sick. It's still amazing. This is also one of the other things I wanted to say about that before we get to the lyrics. This is one of the only songs in the hip hop world that I know of that doesn't seem to have any like other instrumentation besides percussion in it. I mean, this deal right here is like the only kind of melody in it, but all of the rest of it is drums.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. And so let's go back to just some of the blackness of it. Part of why this beat is so popular. Oh, it's some of the best drums you'll ever hear on a beat.
It's incredible.
If not the best set of drums ever made down on a beat. And what's crazy about that, Neptunes aren't known for their drums. They're actually known for all those what I would call oddity hip hop sounds. No, they're not known for that core fundamental beat break hardcore drum shit. So them making this beat is like, whoa.
They got that in the bag too. Like that.
I was like, oh, you got like, okay. Wow, did not know that they had that. So it was one of those things too, because here's the thing, Clipse aren't big, but Pharrell and Chad, the Neptune, oh, they're already major, major.
Okay, that was one thing that if you saw me writing down something earlier, that's what I was writing down. Like, when the song came out, did people already know Pharrell? Did they already know the Neptunes? Like,
Yeah,
was that,
so
or did they rise up at the same time?
no. So how about this? This is just a quick history lesson.
Yeah.
Grinding, they used to be called the Full Eclipse.
Okay.
So their first album had the lead song called The Funeral on it.
Okay.
And The Funeral, I don't think made the actual album, but it was released as a video, and it's a really dope record.
Mm-hmm.
Um, around that time that they're doing that is when the Neptunes start to take off. Now, first of all, people understand Pharrell as a teenager helped Teddy Riley write Rump Shaker. So Pharrell is walking around Virginia Beach with a fucking Grammy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Pharrell's been somebody, he was a teenager.
Right.
But as far as being major, major, the Neptunes come up is about a year and a half in the
Okay.
making. And Pharrell's thing, and this is one of those hip hop things, and there are stories about this. Well, Pharrell wanted the Clipse in the game because he's like, no, we got to show people how we do it in VA.
Right.
See, like he's working with Jay-Z, who's from New York. He's working with Mystical, who's from Louisiana. He's working with Noriega. They're working with all these guys, but they
Mm-hmm.
haven't put home on yet.
Right.
Now, Malice and No Malice and Pharrell went to school together,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken. And you have to understand, all these people have known each other, like Timberland,
Mm-hmm.
Pharrell, Missy, Clipse. All these people have known each other since they were damn near kids.
Okay.
So everybody knows each other. And so the Clipse are probably the Clipse gave Virginia their street credibility. Like Virginia was known as Timberland and Missy and Pharrell. That's all. It's kind of poppy. You know what
Right.
I mean? And Pharrell knew that too. That's why it was like, no, no, no. I
There's
want
some
to show
guys
them
here.
how we get down at the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And the Clipse are those guys. And so this is Pharrell's project of getting his guys from Virginia. Pharrell and Chad. It's more Pharrell the front man than Chad, of course.
Right.
But this is him getting Virginia in the door. That's what grinding is. Like, no, we gonna show them what life is like on the beach for real.
Okay.
Virginia. It's like, no, no, no. Y'all think that it's just me and Timberland and Missy making all these. No, 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 no. There's shit going down here at the beach. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, like,
and Norfolk and Suffolk and the surrounding areas. No, no,
yeah,
no. It goes down.
Michael Vick is from that area. Like,
Correct. Bad
Allen
news.
Iverson's from that area. Like, these guys
Bad
are.
news. They don't call it Newport news. They call it bad news.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like that there, and these are the guys that are, representing. And grinding is one of the like best stepping out onto the stage moments that a rap group that's unheralded has ever had. It's like, who those guys? Where those guys from? Oh, they from Virginia. Them Pharrell people. It's like, oh, I know Virginia guys could spit. Like, okay. Only guy that came out of Virginia before that was even respected as an MC was somebody by the name of Mad Skills.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with Mad Skills?
No, not at all.
Yeah, Mad Skills came out with an album in 1994 that was called From Where.
Oh, okay.
He's from Virginia. He used to have a song called Nod Factor that was really popular. And he's one of hip hop's most notorious ghostwriters. But other than Mad Skills, Virginia had never really seen, the notoriety that this record brought to the Virginia hip hop scene. So it's a game changer for their scene too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
cool. Thank you for that history lesson. Like, this is not one of the songs. I think I said this earlier in the episode. This is not one of the songs that I was familiar with before we. I think this is actually one even that you suggested before we paired it. And usually I want to talk about this one. And this is one of the ones that I put on for the first time, and you're like, oh shit, this is ooh. Ooh. I mean, that was even my uncultured reaction to it. Like not exactly knowing what I'm listening to or whatever else. Like, I didn't know PUSHA was one of the members of this originally until I did research on it after I listened to it the first few times. And then when I saw Pharrell was the one who made the beat, I was like, okay, like I see that I am not
now,
I'm not like super familiar with his work, but enough to know, like, to recognize that this sounds like something that he would do. Not perfectly exemplifying his most popular stuff, but like I can see like him having made this. And yeah, like I said earlier,
I
this
want
is one of those songs that like I can't sit still in the seat when it's playing. Like it's just and my daughter rolls her eyes at me, like the oldest one rolls her eyes at me playing. Like I'm like I don't know how you're sitting still. Like this is
Here's another thing too that you have to understand, because Pusha T obviously is the more renowned of the
right.
brothers now at this stage due to his solo career
Mm-hmm.
and things of that nature. He's not better. He's not a better MC than his older brother at this point, though.
Right.
Like
They
a
seem
good
like they're
day,
pretty much in like
Big Bro's a little better than Little Bro at this point. Not by a lot, but a little bit. And this is one of the things where it's like, well, if you're familiar with their comeuppance, it's like, well, Little Brother has been watching. Like, imagine being Pusha T. It's like your brother's friends with Pharrell and Timbaland. Now, if you go look at his career, he's worked with Pharrell, Timbaland, and Kanye.
Kanye.
It doesn't get any bigger or better than that.
Yeah.
And so he's very, very fortunate in that regard to have these types of ties. But the MC work from these guys is consistently better. And they're in a funky spot where it's like, well, they kind of, these guys started doing East Coast hip hop better than the East Coast guys. They're from Virginia. That's still Southern. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's
So,
definitely a Southern feel to it a little bit. Like there's
right.
a little of that in
But
there.
But they're doing East Coast hip hop better than these guys are. Like they're about the bars, they're about the hustle, they're about the rhymes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and so that was even some of the thing with them not fitting into a certain type of box. It's like, well, these niggas from Virginia, but they rap like they from New York, like lyrically, but they got Pharrell doing beats for, so it was just a confluence
The
of a
beat, yeah,
lot of
beat doesn't sound New Yorkish. Like it's not
right,
rhyming at all. No, it's not
right,
that kind of.
right. It's like something that's unique
It's
unto
funky,
funky. It's unique unto them. It's a Virginia type of sound, I guess.
which
Yeah,
which is one of those connections to Dave Matthews too, because they're also a Virginia band that
right.
is about the funk and not.
Yes.
Yeah, even though I guess I mean Clipse is lyricists, or at least in the songs that we're talking about, the context we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the wordplay in this, like even like the name of the band, like Clipse like bullets, Clipse like the eclipse, like it's
Their name used to be full, their name used to be Full Eclipse.
yeah, like you
And
said that,
so
and I was like, that's why I circled it on the paper, like to make sure I pulled that back around. Like there's so many things that that can mean more than one thing in in their lyrics.
even the group name is an entendre. Yes, the group name is an entendre.
Yeah.
The Clipse.
He uses, I mean, I know he uses cane as cocaine, he uses Cain and Abel, but he also uses like a cane like that you like hold and walk with too.
Right.
Want to leave you frozen, the other nodding and dozing, I'm grinding. Like I love that too. Like the last, I think that's the last bar
Lose
of
your soul, whichever palm I'm holding. Wanna leave you frozen, the other nodding and dozing. I'm grinding, Jack. Like, oh no, I got my pistol on one side, I got the work in the other. How you want it served? What you want to do?
Yeah.
How do you want your beef served? You know what I mean? Yeah.
I got you either way.
It's very right.
Yeah.
I like when he says, "One eye closed, I hit you, as if I was Slick Rick. My aim is still an issue." Now let's pause. There's a lot of hip hop history in that bar by Pusha
Yeah,
T.
I was that's the next one I was going to ask you about. So like
So when he's saying the Slick Rick line, about the one eye thing, one eye closed, I hit you, as if I was Slick Rick, my aim is still an issue. Okay, so when people go to the one eye thing, well, obviously everybody knows Slick Rick wears a patch, right?
Right. Yeah.
A lot of people do not know though. Slick Rick went to prison.
Yeah, I did know that.
Okay, so
I
he
learned
went to
that
prison.
when we talked about him last time. Yeah.
Right. So do you remember when I told you the dude was threatening him and his family and stuff? Well, Rick went and shot him. But the way that the story's been told, he didn't hit him right. That's why he's saying, as if I was Slick Rick, my aim is still an issue. He's talking about the Slick Rick shooting and Slick Rick having one eye. He's not just using Slick Rick to do the one eye thing. When he's saying my aim is still an issue, he's talking about the Slick Rick incident too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's some hip hop history, even as if I was Slick Rick, my aim is still an issue.
Yeah.
Has been like that situation. And so he's kind of letting you know that's one of those things. It's like, oh, their heads, they know their hip hop history.
It's a history thing.
These guys aren't just lyricists. They're not just saying it to be fly. It's like, oh no, he knows his shit. He follows the game. That's one of those things that it's like a lot of people know Slick Rick went to prison, but they don't know the story and how it happened. Right. And so when he said that, I was like, oh, he knows the story. These guys are heads. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw you arguing on Twitter or something like that a few days ago about something where about lyrical miracle people and people having great lyrics and whatever and not meaning anything. And I'm badly paraphrasing the argument, but but the point is that they do both, right? They have the lyrical chops, and it is surprisingly hard to do, to have lyrical chops and have it make it sound incredibly fucking cool and have all these double entendres in their words or whatever, and still have it mean something like serious and technically brilliant too. Like in a independent of the music sense, like if you just put it as a poem on a page or whatever, then it still works as just a poem or that kind of thing.
Yep, absolutely. What other lyrics did you have questions about?
Those are the ones that jumped out to me. We've already addressed them.
Right.
Also too. I love, and it happens in hip hop more than any other genres, but it happens other places too, is when you take like little kids' nursery rhymes and that kind of thing and make them into something serious, or flip them or invert them and use them. And he uses the patty cake, baker's man wanted here.
Yeah.
And bake me a cake as fast
as
you can. Like it's just like, what he's talking about. It's funny, right? Like it's
a great use of literary devices. First of all, and I'll tell you this, the patty cake thing, like, this is what I mean. It's head stuff. If I were to walk around like the east side of Atlanta right now and I go, patty cake, somebody would go, I'm the baker's man. I baked it, like we all know it. Right. That's the patty cake part is the connective thread that makes the song more palatable to those who don't understand. But the literary device and the lyricism is still there, because he said, I bake them cakes as fast as I can, and you can tell from how my bread stacks up. I'm like, oh, that's fucking great.
Yep.
That's great writing. You know what I mean?
Because, in the literal sense, he's talking about bakers too. Like, the poem is talking about bakers, but also he's not talking about, he's using bread.
Right. And so
for those of you who look like me and didn't follow it, like, bread is obviously a money metaphor too, right? Like, it's one of those things.
Right. You can tell about how my bread stacked up. It's like, so he goes from using a nursery rhyme to comparing the baker to the hustle, and then he's calling the money bread. Oh no, it's just wonderfully put together.
And it's flour and cocaine. Like, it's all of that stuff is just all there. Yeah.
Yes, there's so much going on within these words, but you can still just take it on the base literal sense of it too. Yes.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I always talk about this when I teach writing too, is that it has to make sense on a literal level. Like like the literal part, like the plot line, basic storyline has to make sense. It has to be that part has to work, like, for the metaphor stuff to work too. Like, you can't have metaphor. And I think that's the lyrical miracle thing, right? Not to say that those people are doing that, but it has to make sense on a just straightforward level before we worry about the metaphor, right? You can have the straightforward one without the metaphor, but you can't have the metaphor without the straightforward one. Well, or not. It doesn't work the same way.
No, you're right to a degree, but I guess the best way I could kind of pierce through what you're saying is that, like, in rap, you can do all that lyrical miracle stuff if you want to, but people need to understand what you were saying and talking about first.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to say. Maybe I didn't very clearly, but
no, you did it right. I think, let me give you an example. about being lyrically proficient, but people understand. Rakim on Microphone Fiend literally starts off, I was a fiend before I became a teen. I melted microphone instead of cones of ice cream. Music orientated, so when hip hop was originated, fitted like pieces of puzzles, complicated. Lyrically, that's great, but don't you understand every word?
Yeah, of course.
And so it has to be that too. And so some of that lyrical miracle stuff is like, no, what are you talking about? Because I know Rakim is highly lyrically proficient, but I can understand everything that he's talking about when he says it. He says it fly enough in a way that I actually want to repeat it and learn it. That is part of being a great lyricist. You're not a great lyricist if people are not walking around singing your shit. So we have a lot of people in hip hop culture. Well, they're great lyrically, but are you?
So what you're arguing is that part of being a great lyricist is being repeatable or quotable too, or like having something that's memorable, I guess. Like Grindin, for example, Grindin is a great example of this, right? Like it's a perfect example of this. Like the first time I heard this song, I'm walking around fucking singing this song. Like it doesn't take much to like be to do the Abel and Always Cain. Like that is, it sticks.
It's like this. Okay, so do you remember when Kuttner had us read The Awakening? Remember when Kuttner had us read The Awakening? Think about how easy it is to read that book.
Yeah.
And understand the motifs, the archetypes, and everything that's going on.
Yep.
Well, that's part of why it's classic. It has to do that for you. Like the same thing that works for books works in music that way, especially in hip. So it's like when you're telling me that these guys have all these words, it's like, well, what are all those words on pages? Is it entertaining? Because it's like The Awakening isn't a complicated read, but it's a brilliant read. You know, it's like complicated and brilliant are not necessarily synonyms. And I think too often there are MCs out here that think that, oh, well, I do this on this level. It's like, hey, fam, make the song that people want to hear. You know, the greatest MCs.
You can do both. You can do both. Greatest MCs do both. Yeah.
Biggie, Tupac, Nas, Rakim. It's like, oh, no. You can do it.
And like that's a thing that touches that argument hits home to me particularly because when I'm like songwriting and stuff like that, I lean most of the time probably too much towards these words really sound good together, and less about what I'm trying to communicate, right? So what I'm saying is I'm guilty as a songwriter of doing that. So like I notice it when it's happening when other people are doing it too.
Right. Well, I mean, I'll tell you what, and this is another effect of this show too, is I can see how important it is now, even more than ever, because we do this show, to understand what the MC is talking about and the words coming out of their mouth and it connecting with people, because almost all the songs that you give me is easy to understand.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as a knock. I'm actually saying that as a marker of really what good music is supposed to be. No. You are supposed to make music that, quite frankly, people can sing along to. If you're not, go make music in your fucking basement and never put it out. You feel what I'm saying?
Or you can put it out yourself or whatever. I mean, it's fine. I mean, it's not
right. But it's like this whole notion. I think just sometimes the whole notion and craft of MCing, like we take it so seriously. But it's like, hold on, like make the record dope first.
Yeah.
Like make the record dope first. Like worry about make the record good. Like the record needs to be good first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like this record is good.
Yeah, it is. So, and it's something like I was not raised in hip hop culture. Like I did not come up in that world, and I can hear like the first time I heard this song, I was like, oh, this great. like I can hear it immediately. Like it's one of those.
If you know, quote Pusha T. If you know, you know. Yeah, you know when the record comes on, it's like, oh no, that record. And this is one of those records. Yeah.